Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we are ready.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 13th, 2021 Liquor Board hearing, now in session. Our first order of business, the board has all meetings transcribed, which serve as minutes for the hearings. The board keeps such minutes stored electronically and are available to review by calling the board for an appointment. I now make a motion that the transcripts of the previous board hearings held on February 23rd, 2021, and March 9th, 2021, be accepted as board minutes for those dates. And I ask for a second.
Second.
Second it is. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Praley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Jimmy Praley, counsel to the board. At the beginning of every meeting, council makes a few brief announcements. First off, the commissioners are part-time public servants, and they have several outside interests. When they know that they have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest, they will recuse themselves. However, they cannot possibly know who's going to appear from the public in any given matter, which may present a conflict of interest for them. So therefore, I would extend to council or any witnesses participating in tonight's hearing the opportunity that before the hearing starts to raise any issue pertaining to a possible conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict so that the commissioners can consider that and make the appropriate decision. If nothing's raised, then the commissioners will proceed forward with all hearings under the supposition that there is no conflict of interest. Bear with me here. Apologies. Second, for some reason my computer is cutting out. Apologize here. Bear with me. I apologize. My Word documents just completely cut out, and my computer is not allowing me to continue forward. All right, there we go. Secondly, the rules of the board provide that the chair, for the purposes of administrative and judicial economy, can have board's counsel rule on the admissibility of evidence and objections. If there are counsel present for any portion of the hearing and objections are made, then the chairman has given me the opportunity to rule on those objections, and my ruling will therefore be the ruling of the chairman and the ruling of the board. Thirdly, this is a COVID-19 hearing and our rules are published online. Anybody can read them. The public can certainly participate, but only by written statements which are presented to the board prior to the hearing. The commissioners have read all of the applications that have been submitted tonight with all attached exhibits, applications, floor plans, documents, things of that sort, including all statements made by the public. And while the public is invited to listen and look in on our hearings, there will be no public testimony unless previously submitted. Finally, we are smack in the middle of the renewal process, and the board's administrators are unable to process new licenses, transfers, or substitutions for the months of March or April. Therefore, any new licenses, transfers, or substitutions can be picked up on May 3rd, 2021 at the earliest. Apologies for the technological delay there, but with that, I will turn everything back to Chief Inspector Harris to call the first case.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Praley. Wayne Harris, Chief Inspector, Anne Arundel County Liquor Board. The first case is Crofton Liquors, known as J and Harry LLC. Hyphen R. Patel is an authorized person and member. Muska Kumar Patel is a clerk. Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Sapita, number 1239. The inspector of record is James L. Morris. This is a Class A beer, wine, and liquor license with Sunday privileges located at 1641 Route 3, Crofton, Maryland, 2114. There's no restrictions on this license. The violations are as follows. Number one, the violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County. Chapter 4, Section 4.01A, minors, RE, Anne Arundel County Police Report, number 21-704206 by Detective Mountcastle. badge number 1155, and Detective Sapita, badge number 1239, incident dated February 6, 2021. Number 2 is a violation of the alcohol beverages 1, titles 1 through 12, annotated Code of Maryland, title 6, section 6-304. The selling or providing of alcoholic beverages to individuals under the age of 21 years of age. Reference Anne Arundel County Police Report number 21-704-206 by Detective Mountcastle, and number 1155, and Detective Sapita, number 1239, the incident dated February 6, 2021. Okay, anyone wishing to testify for or against, please raise your right hand.
Raise your right hand. Right hand.
Okay, yes, I can see them both now. Thank you.
Yep.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
I do.
Yes.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the records.
Bipin, go ahead.
Bipin Patel, 1510 Augusta Way, Crofton, Maryland, 21114.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mukesh Patel, 6810 Green Holloway, Highland, MD 20777.
Thank you. Mr. Pirelli.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kim, since this is a COVID-19 hearing, there's going to be no waiving of the reading. So I would ask that Detective Sapita read his report into the record, please.
Thank you
Okay,
very much,
sir.
Mr. Burley.
All right, sir, can you hear my phone okay?
Yeah, please state your name and address for the record,
All right.
Detective.
Detective Charles Sapeta, Anne Arundel County Police Department, badge number 1239.
Okay, and when you're ready, Detective.
Okay. All right, on February 6, 2021, at approximately 2:15 hours, Detective Malkhouse and I were conducting alcohol sales compliance checks of retail businesses. We directed a confidential source, 18 years of age, to enter the Crofton Liquors establishment located at 1641 Crane Highway, North Crofton. That's in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. We observed the confidential source enter the business. The confidential source went into the store, picked out an 18-pack of White Claw cherry seltzers, and took it into the front counter. The confidential source was given official Anne Arundel County funds and was able to purchase the 18-pack of Miller Lite beer from the clerk. The clerk did not ask the confidential source for identification. Confidential source exited the business and immediately turned over the alcoholic beverages to myself, Detective Mountcastle. I know through my training, knowledge, and experience that an 18-pack of Miller Lite beer is an alcoholic beverage. Detective Mountcastle, ID number 1155, and I entered the store, identified ourselves as police officers, and identified the clerk as, I hope I'm saying it correctly, Mr. Patel. I'll spell out the first name. Sam, Henry, Adam, Nora King, Adam Robert, Lincoln, Adam Lincoln. Identified him through his Maryland driver's license. Mr. Patel advised that he forgot to card the confidential source. Mr. Patel was very cooperative and stated that he made a mistake and will card minors and persons that purchase alcohol in the future to avoid any further incidents. Photographs were taken of Mr. Patel, his driver's license, and the Anne Arundel County liquor license that was fully displayed in the inside the business. The Miller Lite alcoholic beverage was photographed and then destroyed. A copy of this report was forwarded to the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board. This case is closed.
Okay, thank you, Detective. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Kim, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Mr. Fairley, good to see everyone safe and sound. I just have one question. I assume this is a typo because.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. It's not. Just for the purposes of the hearing, it's an 18-pack of Miller Lite, not
Yeah,
Claw.
I presumed it was just a typo. that's really the only thing I just wanted to clear up, that it was probably a typographical error. Mr. Chairman, I've met with my clients. I've discussed the allegations. We do not dispute the allegations. I can tell you that Mr. Mukesh Patel is very, he's devastated by the allegations and the violation. And what we've done, hopefully, so that it doesn't happen again. I mean, all 4 employees, including Mr. Patel, have gone through alcohol awareness training again, even though they are certified. I did submit that to Mr. Arrington this afternoon or this evening. In addition to that, the Crofton Liquors has installed a POS system that requires the cashier or the clerk to ask for an ID and type in the actual birthday of the person purchasing the alcoholic beverages. And then in addition to that, the POS system has a calendar that sort of, I think that pops up in the corner of the screen that shows the date that the purchasers must be 21, for them to be 21 years old and to be able to purchase it. And we're hoping and we sincerely believe that these actions will prevent any further violations before and appearance before this board. We ask you to take that into consideration. And this is the first violation for Crofton Liquors. I think it's just a purchase in maybe June of 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Before we turn to questions that the board or Mr. Chairman may have for your clients, I would ask if the chairman has any questions for the detective at this point.
I don't, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner, Commissioner, do you have any questions of the detective?
This is Commissioner Duffy. I do have one question, and that is in reference to a comment that was made in reference to Mr. Patel, if he purchased a scanner or not to identify individuals when they purchase liquor as far as age. I thought I heard the detective Manikoff mention that he indicated that he would purchase a scanner.
We have it's a POS system, Commissioner Duffy, that requires the clerk to it actually reminds the clerk with every sale, ask for ID, and then the clerk needs to actually type in the date of birth of the purchaser. It's not a scanner in terms per se where they scan the card. I mean, I can talk to the clients about maybe purchasing that, but they believe that going through the process of asking, because in this case, he just neglected to ask for the ID. I mean, it's just a horrible mistake on his part. So I think it's not a normal practice, but we're hoping that by having a reminder at every transaction that it would solve that problem.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kim. I appreciate it because I thought I understood him to say that he indicated that he would purchase a scanner, but that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And Commissioner Pilkins has a backup question. When was the system installed that you do have? With the reminder in it.
I believe the system, the POS system was installed on April 1, Commissioner.
Oh, so it was subsequent to the violation?
Yes, sir. Because I mean, we can't dispute the allegations and the charges. What we're trying to do is make sure it doesn't happen again.
Sure, I understand. We have a good record, so.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
That's the only question I have.
Okay. The only comment I'd make is that he forgot, the word forgot to check the, but I guess the system should, if
Yes, sir.
properly, should take care of that. So thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from any of the commissioners or the chairman? Okay. Well, Mr. Kim, this would normally be the time where I would ask you to present your case by way of proper testimony. If you have anything else that you would like to add, please go right ahead. If you'd like to question either of the licensees. Now's your turn. Now's your chance.
Now, the facts are not in dispute, the allegations are not in dispute, we acknowledge we made a mistake. I think Mr. Mukesh Patel was very cooperative with the detective because he knew he made a mistake. I mean, we're not, listen, once in a while I get a case where I actually have a defense, but we don't, this is not one of them. So I think we're gonna do what we need to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. I think that's our goal, so that it doesn't happen again.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any additional questions?
No additional questions.
Representation. Commissioner Duffy, any additional questions based on Mr. Kim's proffer?
No, sir.
Commissioner
Pilkins.
Okay, well, with that, we will declare the public record and public testimony portion of this closed. We'll turn to deliberation and decision from the board.
Any deliberation from the board? I'd certainly entertain a motion at this point if there's no other discussion.
Commissioner Pilkins would put a $250 fine on.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, wasn't worded well, but that's the thought process. Anyway.
Is there a second on that?
A second.
Okay, seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. May I be excused, or may we be excused?
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Thank you very, very much. Have a good evening.
You too. We're going to be calling the next case. This is Fat Boys Crab House, known as F&H Group LLC. Deanna Pumphrey, member. Faith Nicole Shepard, clerk. Detective Mountcastle, number 1155. Detective Sapita, number 1239. James L. Morris is the inspector for the liquor board. First violation is a violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County. Chapter 4, Section 401A, minors, RE, Anne Arundel County Police Department. Report number 21-704207 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Sapita, number 1239. The incident was dated February 6th of 2021. The second violation is a violation of the Alcohol Beverage 1, Titles 1 through 12, the Annotated Code of Maryland. Title 6, Section 6-304, selling or providing alcoholic beverage to an individual under the age of 21 years. RE, Anne Arundel County Police Report 21-704207 by Detective Mountcastle, badge 1155, and Detective Sapita, 1239. The incident was dated February 6th of 2021. This is a Class B license for beer, wine, and liquor with growler, dancing, and Sunday licenses. It's located at 1651 Maryland Route 3, North Crofton, zip code 2114. There are restrictions on this license. The restrictions are a licensee must provide monthly by the 10th of the following month a statement from the CPA as to the amount of food sales and the amount of alcohol sales, both on and off sales. Number 2, only one 783 square foot of the premises can be used to display, sell, and store off sales liquor. Anyone wishing to testify for or against, please come in, raise your right hand. Raise your right hand, please. Ms. Shepard, thank you. Okay, do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury and that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Brown? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Yeah, sorry about that, Mr. Brown. All right, please state your name and address for the record as well, please.
My name is Faith Shepard. My address is 1735 Terrapin Hills Drive, Bowie, Maryland, 0721.
Okay, Ms. Pumphrey.
My name is Diana Pumphrey. My address is 1011 Samantha Lane, Unit 402 in Odenton, Maryland, 21113.
Okay, thank you both. Mr. Praley.
All right, thank you, Chief Inspector Harris. Detective Sapita, it's on you again. Again, this is a COVID-19 hearing, so there will be no waiving of the reading if you don't mind reading your report for the record.
Will do, sir. Thank you. On February 6th, 2021, myself and Detective Mountcastle were conducting alcohol compliance checks of local retail businesses within Anne Arundel County. We directed a confidential source, 18 years of age. The subject entered the establishment known as Fat Boy's Crab Shack liquor store located at 1651 Crane Highway North, Anne Arundel County. That's in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, obviously. We observed the confidential source enter the business. The confidential source went into the establishment and picked out an 18-pack of White Claw cherry seltzers and took it to the front counter. The confidential source was given official Anne Arundel County funds and was able to purchase the product from the clerk. The clerk did not ask the confidential source for identification. Confidential source exited the establishment immediately after purchasing the product and turned the said product over to, must have been experienced that a White Claw Black Cherry Seltzer is an alcoholic. Or afterwards, identified ourselves as police officers, and then subsequently identified the clerk as Faith Nicole Shepard via her Maryland driver's license. The Shepard advised that she forgot to card the confidential source. Mr. Shepard was very cooperative and stated that she made a mistake and should have carded the confidential source. Photograph was taken of Mrs. Shepard, her Maryland driver's license, and is attached to this report. A photograph was also taken of the product, the alcoholic product known as White Claw Black Cherry Seltzers, and then it was subsequently destroyed. The photograph was then taken of the Anne Arundel County liquor license, which was properly displayed within the establishment. A copy of this report was forwarded to the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board. This case is closed.
All right, thank you, Detective. Would that conclude your report?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, this is your opportunity to ask any questions that you may have of the detective.
Hello, this is Stephen Brown, BROWN for the record. We do not contest the violations occurred. We simply ask to have the opportunity to proffer in mitigation.
Okay, yeah, just a minute. I'm going to see if the board has any questions of the detective, and then we'll turn it over to you. So, Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions of the detective on this one?
Excuse me, I do not.
Commissioner Duffy or Wilkins?
Sure, Pilkins has no questions. Good report.
Jeffrey has no question.
Okay. Having no questions, Mr. Brown, we'll turn it right over to you. You can present your case tonight by way of testimony or proffering, or a combination of both.
Okay. We're going to move forward with proffer, take advantage of the COVID scenario we have here. We are both vaccinated, so this is a little bit of the new normal transitioning in. I wanted to be here today to tell you guys about the Crab House here has been a great community member for over a decade. We have a spotless record when it comes to the liquor board here. We really pride ourselves in making sure that we go above and beyond in educating our employees and really sort of paying attention to the little things that help us stay ahead of these types of violations. And unfortunately, given the day and age we're in, a mistake was made, and we do not. We recognize that it's our duty not to make mistakes. And unfortunately, one of the problems that came out of this was, as hard as it is to keep employees, we had to move on from Faith here, and it really hurts us because she was a great employee for us. And so, that was the immediate step that we had to take, looking forward in realization that we can't change the past, but what we can do moving forward. We took pretty aggressive steps when it comes to education. We had our entire alcohol-facing, sales-facing staff do recertification through TIPS. Each one has passed that and now has their certification. We have the acknowledgement from the TIPS coordinator that will, I have these forms. I'm happy to put them up on the screen if that would be beneficial to you all, but suffice it to say, I proffer that they have passed all of their tests and their certifications and will receive their card shortly. We also moved forward with having each of our staff members go through additional training that we found through MALA, M-A-L-A. They are a group that put on a presentation in December specifically on minors and COVID and trying to prevent and the steps we can take to prevent sales to minors. So each one of our alcohol-facing employees are going to go through that as well. Finally, we've also worked to sort of remind and empower the staff members through focusing on what our policies are, reminding to look, if you feel unsure, if the individual looks younger than 40 years old, we must go through the procedures to ask them to step back from the counter, remove the mask, make sure that the license ID picture matches the individual who's presenting it to us. Again, if you feel unsure, we've circulated a reminders page that provides each one of the employees with an update on the different things they can do when reviewing IDs to sort of combat the challenges that COVID has presented us. And finally, it also gives us sort of different acronyms. The VIP acronym we use to say, check for a valid ID. Is it expired? Is it match the person we have? Impersonations. Does the picture match the person who's presenting it to us? And problems. Does it have any breaks? Is there any bumps on it? Something wrong with the lamination? So we only sell to VIPs, people who don't have those issues. And finally, again, empowering our employees to know that we will back them 100% if they feel in any way, shape, or form that there is an issue or that they're just not comfortable with the sale. Don't do it. We would rather refuse the sale than sell to minors. So with those steps that we've put in place with additional training, we've also purchased, I heard you mention asking about scanners. We did purchase scanners for the liquor store to be able to thwart fake ID issues. So we have those in place. We purchased 2 of them. So what we're asking at this point is we can't change the past, but we're working on changing the future and make sure that we don't mess up in the future for you all and for the community itself. And we ask, without any prior violations, with our commitment to compliance and the above and beyond steps we've taken, that you grant us leniency in whatever decision you make this evening.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Chairman, any questions for Mr. Brown or the licensee?
I just make a comment that you mentioned above and beyond. It appears that you've done that. And I'm just curious, how many employees went through that program?
I believe we had 12.
12? Okay. It's excellent. Good start. And again, it gets where you look at the testimony here and, she forgot to, unfortunately, it's crazy. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions of council for licensee?
No, just a comment in reference to the scanners. Are we being proactive here, or was that reactive in reference to buying the scanners?
Certainly reactive. We purchased them shortly after the violation as an additional step to try to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Okay, in reference to that, including everything else, was that all proactive in reference to the reminder, the training and all that? Was that proactive as well?
Well, we get everybody trained. We are already doing everybody on the tips training. The additional training we went and looked for, there didn't appear to be webinars or anything outside of the Montgomery County MALA groups. So that's why we rely on them. I realize that some of their presentations reference Montgomery County provisions, but we're also pretty aware that some of those are a little bit more restrictive, and we also discuss how that translates to us here.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I have no other comment. Council.
Pilkins.
Commissioner Pilkins has no questions. Nice job.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, we will declare the public record closed on this, and we will turn it to the board for deliberation and decision.
Any deliberation on the board? Any comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Duffy. I make a motion that we find them based on the fact that this is the first violation and they're very well known within the community and have an outstanding reputation. $250 fine.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any discussion further? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. May I excuse?
Have a good day. Chief Inspector Wayne Harris calling the next case. Odenton Liquors, known as C&W Inc., Ajit Chima, President, H.S. Warwick, Secretary Treasurer, Frederick Grand, Assistant Secretary, Detective Sapita, number 1239, Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Middleton, number 1061. The inspector is Inspector Karen Klein for the Liquor Board. This is a Class A license for beer, wine, and liquor and growlers, as well as beer, wine, spirit tasting, and Sunday licenses. This is located at 1115 Annapolis Road, Odenton, Maryland, 2113. There are no restrictions on this license. The violations are as follows. 1, the violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County, Chapter 4, Section 4.01A, minors. RE, Anne Arundel County Police Department, report number 21-704-209 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, Detective Middleton, number 1061, and Detective Sapita, number 1239. The incident dated February 6th of 2021. Second violation of alcoholic beverage 1, Titles 1 through 12, Annotated Code of Maryland. Title 6, Section 6-304, selling or providing alcoholic beverages to individuals under the age of 21. Under the age of 21 years. Reference RE County Police Report 21-704-209 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, Detective Middleton, number 1061, and Detective Sapita, 1239. The incident dated February 6, 2021. Anyone wishing to testify for or against, please make yourself visible if possible. Raise your right hand. Okay. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Please identify yourself, Mr. Chima, by name and address.
Baljeet Chima, 1303 Rome Court, Odenton, Maryland, 21113.
Okay, thank you. Detectives, would you identify yourselves, please?
Detective Sapeta, body number 1239.
Detective Middleton, are you with us?
Stand by. Let me check your. Let me check, sir. Second.
All right. Warwick, Secretary Treasurer, can you hear me? Mr. Bittner, do you know if they're, oh, okay.
Yes, that licensee did not register, so I was unable to put them in.
Okay.
The meeting.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I think it just said, I think Mr. Aronson just said that licensee did not register, so he was unable to place in the meeting.
Is that Mr. Grande?
Correct.
Mr. Grande couldn't make it because he had a back surgery, so that's why he couldn't make it. So.
If I may, I'm Richard Bittner, Bittner, and I represent the licensees. On that note with Mr. Grande, we recently learned of his condition. I sent a letter to the board, an email to the board earlier this afternoon asking if he could not appear. He was going to try to do his best to be here. I was advised that his appearance be waived. We'll take no appeal from his absence.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bittner. I appreciate it. And Detective, are you ready to read your report? Have we gotten Detective Middleton on?
If I may,
sure,
Mr. Chairman, because I have a number of, if I may, preliminary matters before we get to that, and I'll be happy to address those when the board wants me to.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to hear the preliminary matters right now?
If you, Yes, let's hear those.
Thank you. Initially, if I may, and this is for the record, Richard Bittner again, I did not hear the officers take the oath, and I would object to the procedure with the officers not being visible. Now, beyond that, because I know they'll take the oath and the officers have testified before, but I think for record purposes, that needs to be clear. I also respectfully request that they appear in person. This is a COVID hearing, but the due process rules, the confrontation rules, most respectfully, fundamental fairness, I think would require a law enforcement officer who's testifying in support of a request to potentially revoke a proprietary interest, the livelihood of a citizen, that least that can be expected is that the officer appear visually. And that's important in this case because the officer is offering substantive, or is being proffered, to offer substantive testimony in support of the violation. Now, a report has been prepared. Reports, most respectfully, are not evidence. Reports are to aid the testifying witness if they need aid in remembering what occurred. So a police report of this nature is simply not, I suggest most respectfully, substantive evidence. So procedurally, officers need to be sworn, they need to testify. Now, in that same light, we made a request on March the 11th that the board provide me with copies of all charging documents, reports, and evidence that the board intends to introduce or rely on at the hearing in support of the allegations. And true to the board's professional form, that request was replied to the very next day. And the board provided me a copy of the police report, a 7-page document, 21-704209, and a copy of the comprehensive alcohol report. No documentation was provided regarding the bona fides of the alleged confidential informant who acted as a participant, as a government agent in this sting operation. The board historically, as a matter of practice, I believe for some 25 years, has not required the confidential informant to appear, but has required law enforcement to provide at the time of the hearing and in certain circumstances before the hearing, upon motion being made, founded in good cause, to provide the identity of that confidential informant. We have not been provided that identity. We have not been provided a copy of the driver's license, state-issued identification card, other government verified identification indicating that this person is in minority. Nor in the report that was filed is there any reference other than a conclusory statement, we directed a confidential source 18 years of age to enter the location. I submit most respectfully that a report, if it's going to be relied on as evidence, it's got to have more than just a conclusory statement, even in an administrative hearing where the preponderance of the evidence standard is what we're dealing with. And I understand, we all understand this isn't a criminal case. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt standard, but there are still, most respectfully, and the board has always followed them, basic fundamental fairness that should and need to apply. And a report that doesn't say, we know the person, we knew the person's age because of this, that, or the other thing, simply a conclusion without any substantiation, most respectfully should not be sufficient, COVID or otherwise. So I'd ask, I'm making a motion right now that the board take no action in this case because the law enforcement agency has not provided the licensee with documentation of the underage confidential source, in fact, being underage.
I'll go ahead and deny that. So can we go ahead?
Yeah, let's swear everybody, and then and if we can get Detective Middleton to appear by video, I believe that was something that was requested. If it can't happen, and it just can't happen, we can, Mr. Chairman, you can assume that they've been raising their right hand and sworn in appropriately.
Okay, are we able to get the detectives, or you want to proceed without their video?
If we can't get their video, then Mr. Chairman may assume that they are raising their right hand and they are being sworn in appropriately. You can administer the oath. Mr. Aronson?
Yeah, I just sent a message. Unfortunately, they're on a phone that does not provide video.
That's all right. We can administer the oath.
All right, and we'll do the audio. Detective Middleton, are you with us?
Detective Cepeda reference. I think he's having technical difficulties with his cell or his mobile device. Would it be possible if I could read his report?
Are you with him now?
No, sir, I'm not.
Mr. Fraley?
Yeah.
Objection.
That's going to be overruled, Mr. Bittner. We can, Detective Cepeda, if you get sworn in, you can read his report.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. For those people who haven't been sworn in, you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Would you please indicate name and address or location, detective?
My name is Detective Charles Cepeda, in Arundel County Police Department, ID number 1239.
Okay.
Western District Detective Unit, sorry.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Fraley?
All right, thank you. Detective, you can go ahead and read your report. As I've mentioned previously, this is a COVID-19 hearing and there's no waiver. So proceed when you're ready.
All right, sir. On February 6th, myself, Detective Mountcastle, Detective Middleton, and Detective Sergeant White were working Operation SAVE. It's an acronym for conducting alcohol sales compliance checks for retail businesses. We directed a confidential source. The confidential source was 18 years of age to enter the Odington Liquor Establishment store located at 1115 Annapolis Road. That's in Odington, Anne Arundel County, Maryland. Detectives observed the confidential source enter the business. The confidential source went inside to pick out a 12-pack of Miller Lite beer.
Objection, personal knowledge.
That'll be overruled.
I was part of the operation, sir.
Did you see? Did you observe? Well, I'm not doing fiery yet.
Not right now. You'll have the opportunity to cross-examine and ask questions.
I understand.
Nor will he respond to things that aren't questions.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Detective.
Okay, sorry. The confidential source went into the establishment, picked out a 12-pack of Miller Lite beer, and took it to the front counter. Confidential source was given official Anne Arundel County funds and was able to purchase the Miller Lite beer from the clerk. The clerk did not ask the confidential source for identification. The confidential source exited the business and immediately turned over the alcoholic beverages to myself and the other detectives. Myself, Detective Middleton, and Detective Mountcastle notes for our training, knowledge, and experience that Miller Lite beer is an alcoholic beverage. Detective Mountcastle, myself, and Detective Middleton then entered the establishment, identified ourselves as police officers, and identified the clerk of, I hope I'm saying it correctly, Mystikim Alam, date of birth of September 5th, 1992, via his Maryland driver's license. Mr. Alam was very cooperative and stated that he made a mistake and should have carded the confidential source. The photograph was taken of Mr. Alam and his driver's license and are attached to this report. The photograph was also taken of the Miller Lite alcoholic beverage, and then it was subsequently destroyed. A photograph was also taken of the Anne Arundel County liquor license, which was properly hanging on the wall behind the cashier's counter. A copy of this report was forwarded to the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board. This case is closed.
Okay, and does that conclude the report, Detective?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bittner, any questions for the detective?
Yes, thank you. Detective Cepeda, prior to February the 6th of 2021, what was your firsthand personal knowledge of the confidential source? What I mean by that, did you know this confidential source prior to February the 6th, 2021?
Yes.
And
just by sight only, not personally.
So you knew him by, you knew the person by sight only, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you indicated that at some point you and the Operation Save detail entered Odenton Liquors. Is that right? Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, after the violation, yes.
So prior to entering the establishment, first off, where were you? Where were you located physically?
I was outside of the parking lot.
In or outside your
covert location.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up, detective. I can't hear you.
So talking about my vehicle, was inside my vehicle. Better.
Let's try that again.
Okay, let me ask the question. So you were outside the establishment. Where outside the establishment?
On the parking lot, inside my vehicle.
Okay. So you couldn't see what happened inside?
Nope, not at all.
What you mentioned that SAVE is an acronym. What does that stand for again?
I have no idea.
You have no idea what Operation SAVE stands for?
No, I don't.
Okay. What is the criteria for the detail to go to a particular establishment? How do you decide where to go?
We just pick locations in the district randomly.
All right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Detective.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Yeah, I have no questions.
Commissioner Pilkins?
No questions from Commissioner Pilkins.
All right, Commissioner Duffy, any questions of the detective?
No, sir. No questions.
All right, Mr. Bittner, I'll turn it over to you. You can proceed by way of testimony, questioning your clients, or by way of proffer, or a combination of both.
Thank you very much. So at this time, most respectfully, I'm going to renew my motion for a no action in this case. The evidence in support of the allegation simply does not conform with any basic rudimentary fairness, due process principles, or the basic rules of evidence. We have Officer Cepeda, who reads Officer Middleton's report, and it's not based on any of Officer Cepeda's firsthand personal knowledge. Officer Cepeda testifies that he doesn't know the confidential source except by sight. He doesn't identify him. He doesn't say how. He knows he's 18 because he doesn't know. He's simply reading Officer Middleton's report. Operation SAVE hasn't provided the board, they haven't provided me, they haven't provided the licensee any documentation regarding this confidential source that in fact they're under the age of 21. So most respectfully, I ask the board to take no action in this case because it simply hasn't been proven beyond the preponderance of the evidence the way that it's been presented here tonight. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me now? This is Detective Middleton. I think I might have gotten on now.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Detective Middleton, correct?
Okay, good. Okay, yes, I finally got my my issue fixed. Call back in and it's working now.
Hey, Detective, would you just please identify yourself for the record, name, badge number?
Yeah, Detective Thomas Middleton, Anne Arundel County Police Department. My badge number is 1061. I'm assigned to Western District.
Thank you.
Okay, and Chief Harris, could we swear Detective Middleton in also? I'm not sure if he administered the oath orally.
Absolutely, Mr. Fraley.
Thank you.
Detective, do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
All right, well, at this
Most
point—
respectfully, for the record, I want to make an objection to the testimony of Officer Middleton at this time. The case in chief, I understood, was concluded with Officer Cepeda's testimony. We moved to my case. I made a motion for no action at the close of the evidence. That's a motion made at the close of the evidence. So the evidence in support of this allegation, I believe, was closed. So I object to Officer Middleton's being called as a witness at this time. There's been no rebuttal presented, so he's not a proper witness.
Understood. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to rule on that, or would you like to make a ruling on whether we could—
I'm just going to make a few comments on that. Mr. Middleton has been trying to get in. We're in a situation where we're in a Zoom atmosphere. It wasn't like he wasn't trying to get here. So now he's here. So I'm thinking we ought to hear what he has to say, and we should move on. If you have something else, Mr. Fraley,
No, I will presume for the record that would that be a denial of Mr. Bittner's request? Okay.
It is.
Detective Middleton, anything to add? Feel free to do so. Now's your opportunity to testify.
Okay, yeah, I could hear everything. I was trying to, like I said, get on. So I was here the entire time. I just, for some reason, it wouldn't allow me to unmute my phone. So I was there on the day, February 6, 2021 at the Odenton liquor store. And I would just add that the confidential source that we use is identified and checked through the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration to certify their age, and we are able to verify that the subject that we were using was indeed 18 years of age, and I have documentation of that. So the other thing that the attorney, Mr. Bittner, he wanted to know about Operation SAVE, a selective alcohol violation enforcement. So I don't know if there's anything else I need to add other than, because he read off my report, which I would say was a fair statement.
Okay, thank you, Detective Middleton. Mr. Bittner, do you have any questions for Detective Middleton?
Detective, do you know what the criteria is to select an establishment for SAVE enforcement?
We pick an area, and like on this particular day, we pick an area. So we picked Western District, which is an area, and we go from the one geographical area to the other, and we just hit as many county liquor establishments that we can get to. And of course, we are depending on how many we get and how busy it is, determines how long we can go. So this particular night, we actually had 6 violations. We generally try to get at least 10 establishments, and once we get 10 establishments, it's usually the amount of time that we have, because we have to process all the paperwork and drive people and drop them off and that type of thing. So just for logistical reasons, time and geographical. So we don't have a, you know, we will try to attempt to hit every liquor establishment in a certain area, but you know, of course, due to timing and stuff and the route we pick, that type of thing also determines, you know, what we come upon. So there's no, you know, that particular day we did not have like a certain stores that we were going to hit. We hit the stores as we went along down a route, and if you were to look at the compliance list of what we did that day, you could actually follow along on a map and see how we just went from the north top part of Western District down towards the south part of Western District. So that day is how we basically, the geographical way is how we determined what places we checked that day.
So you, I mean, thank you for that. So I understand it that the group, the detail determines where they go?
No, the geographic location of, like I said, Western District, we started at the north end and worked our way to the south end. So we started at the north end, so we hit liquor establishments that were up north, and as we traveled down, the ones we came upon, we checked, and we headed further south. And once we had attained a certain number of places, you know, in time-wise, we had to stop. So.
Now you mentioned stores. Do you go to restaurants?
Yes, that particular day, I don't know if you considered Fat Boys Crab Shack is a restaurant. So technically we did that day. I think that was the only one. We have hit at other geographical locations like Eastern District. We have hit restaurants, Pfeiffer's, so yeah, so to answer that question, yes, we have.
And again, that's just decided when you go out to do a detail that evening. Is that what I understand? Am I understanding that correctly?
We decide when we go out that evening?
Yes.
There's a lot of factors. Where we start, where we have to pick up our confidential source a lot of times. Like I said, a lot of it boils down to timing and geography of where we start. But we do have a list of all establishments, and we are attempting to hit every establishment to do a compliance check. That is our end goal.
You keep a record of every establishment you go to?
Yes, we do.
And what do you do with that record?
We submit it to the health department. That's where we get our funding from. So they get a list of where we go, who's checked, who passes, and who also is in violation.
You submit that report to the liquor board?
I don't know if they got a copy, but I know the health department did get a copy.
You yourself don't submit it to the board, or your detail doesn't submit it to the board?
Oh, no, only the violations. We submit the violation reports to the liquor board.
So if you visit an establishment and it passes, do you notify the liquor board of that fact?
No, I don't personally. The health department may, but we submit the list of the compliance checks to the health department, but only the violations that we get, we submit to the liquor board for as far as the reports.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner. Mr. Chairman, any questions for Detective Middleton? Oh, you got it. You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry for that. Detective Middleton, looked like it was a pretty active day on February the 6th. Did you hit actually 10 places that day?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay, so 6 were cited and then 4, can you relatively say were compliant with?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Let me just go back a little bit with regard to the question. Who decides or who's involved in the decision that your group goes in? I mean, you don't wake up tomorrow morning, let's say, I'm going to hit 10 locations, right? I mean, how does that work?
Our supervisor tells us.
Okay, and the supervisor is who? Basically, or who?
Sergeant White. Sergeant White.
Okay.
Our supervisor. He's in basic control of the monies that are gotten from the health department for the grant. So he's responsible for keeping track of what money is spent and the compliance detail itself. So, you know, we'll get a directive from the sergeant that, you know, we need to do compliance checks in a certain district, you know, Western District, and we'll get a call from the supervisor that says we need to do compliance checks in Eastern District. And then, you know, like I said, a lot of it depends on the geography of where we start, who we use as a confidential source, because we have to pick them up and go over the training and search them and all that. And then we start. So, you know, we won't like pick them up and then have to drive an hour across the county to start somewhere else if we can help it, to save, you know, a lot of it's timing.
I got you. I understand. So one last question. What does the acronym SAVE mean?
Selective Alcohol Violation Enforcement.
Thank you. Bingo. No more questions.
Okay. All right, Commissioners Duffy or Pilkins, any questions for the detective?
This is Commissioner Duffy. I have no question.
Commissioner Pilkins, no questions. A good report.
All right, Mr. Bittner, in light of that additional testimony, do you have anything you would like to add?
I would just renew my motions previously made and submit.
Mr. Maloney, would you like to rule on the previous motion that the board take no action?
Yeah, we'll take no action and move on.
So you're denying that motion, correct?
I am denying the motion.
Right. Okay. With that, we'll close the public record portion of this, and we'll move to the board's deliberation and decision.
I'm sorry. I had a question for either Mr. Bittner or the owner. How long they've been involved with Telegraph Liquor?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to address all those issues when you feel it's appropriate for me to do so in what I anticipate would be mitigation.
Sure.
I don't have any presentation.
Okay.
As a defensive chief, we understand your rulings and we'd like to be heard in mitigation.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Bittner. I didn't understand that, but you can certainly be heard in mitigation now.
Certainly, thank you. As you heard from the report, the clerk involved in this case was extremely cooperative, was extremely contrite and remorseful, and he admitted and conceded that he made a mistake. And sadly, that's what the owners who are here with you, Mr. Chima and Mr. Warchin, would tell you. They already have in place, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, what they believed mitigated and ameliorated the human factor that plays ever so present in these types of violations. They have card scanning machines, they have signage, they have their employees TIPS and TAMs certified, they have already swift punishment to an employee who violates. The employee, Mr. Amin, he was suspended for 2 weeks without pay. They did bring him back because he had been with them for some 2 years without a violation. This is an owner-occupied business. The owners are on premises every day throughout the day. And that's why they haven't been before you since 2018. By our calculations, in that time period, it's our calculations that there's about 150,000 points of sale, cash register points of sale that are made every year in the establishment. So there's been some million sales without incident. We haven't, unfortunately, Operation Save doesn't keep the records of who passes and when they go, but this establishment has been incident free, and they tell me, and I'm telling you, that it was an error. They thought, the clerk tells me that he thought he recognized the gentleman. It's a problem with masks. As I explained to my clients, that's not a defense. In fact, it creates an even higher standard on you to make sure who you're serving. And it simply was human error. And most respectfully, I'd ask the board, given all of the circumstances, the cooperation, the remorse, the contriteness, that the board issue a reprimand in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner. Mr. Chairman, any questions for Mr. Bittner or the licensees?
Yeah, I was just curious how long they have been at Telegraph Liquors, or I'm sorry, Oakington Liquors.
I'll be able to give you that.
Oh,
Mr. Cheney, you can answer it quicker than I look it up. How long have you had?
11 years. 11 years.
11 years. Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Chairman?
I have no questions.
Commissioners Duffy or Pilkins?
Commissioner Pilkins, I thought I heard someone testify it was 2 years he'd been with them, the salesperson who, and now I hear 8 years.
It was 2 years, but we've been there for 11 years.
Yeah, I know that, but that wasn't the question, actually. The question was, how long had that salesperson been there? That's what I thought the chairman was asking.
No, I heard mistakenly. I thought.
No, I asked how long you've operated that store.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my error.
11 years. Good.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions?
No, I have no question.
All right. With that, we will turn it over to the board for deliberation, discussion, and decision.
Any discussion from the commissioners? No? I'll go ahead and make a motion that we fine Odin and Liquors $250 for the violation. Any second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you all very much. Chief Wayne Harris, calling the next case. The place known as MAPA LLC, Pradeep S. Patel, member, Chandrakant Kadar, member, Detective Mount Castle, 1155, Detective Sapita, 1239, and the inspector is Karen Klein. This is a Class D beer, wine, and liquor license with dancing and Sunday licenses. 8318 Telegraph Road, Odenton, Maryland, 21113. There's no restrictions on this license. The violations are as follows. Violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County, Chapter 4, Section 4.01. A, minors, reference Anne Arundel County Police Department report number 21-704210 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Sapita, number 1239, the incident dated February 6, 2021. Second violation, violation of the alcohol beverages 1, Titles 1 through 12, Annotated Code of Maryland, Title 6, Section 6-304, selling or providing alcoholic beverages to individuals under the age of 21 RE, Anne Arundel County Police Report number 21-704210 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Sapita, number 1239, the incident dated February 6, 2021. There are no restrictions on that license. Okay, anyone wishing to testify for or against, please raise your right hand. Okay, I'm assuming Detective Mountcastle and Detective Sapita, you're with us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Would you please state your name and address for the record? Mr. Bittner, your client can start.
Sir.
Yes, my name is Mr. Patel. I'm living the 602 Strawberry Road, Severn, Maryland 21144.
Okay, sir, you can put your hand down. Detectives, please identify yourselves.
Detective Charles Sapeta, Anne Arundel County Police Department, ID number 1239.
Thank you.
Detective Mountcastle, Anne Arundel County Police Department, ID 1155.
Thank you. Mr. Fraley.
All right, thank you, detectives.
If I may, Richard Bittner, BITTNER, on behalf of the licensee, and I do have a preliminary matter.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, would you like to hear the preliminary matter before? You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Let's go ahead with that preliminary matter.
Thank you. And for brevity, which, believe it or not, I try to be, I want to adopt my arguments made in the matter of Odenton Liquors so far as they're relevant to this hearing. I would state that we did make a request on March the 16th that the board provide all charging documents, reports, and evidence to me prior to the hearing. I've been provided a report and 8-page report authored purportedly by Officer Cepeda. Again, it doesn't contain any documentation of the minor. It's all conclusions. We haven't been provided any documentation that the board historically and previously has requested that they be presented so that the licensee has some knowledge of actually what went on, and I'll submit on those arguments.
So, Mr. Bittner, just for clarity, the board take no action on this matter?
Correct.
Okay.
So noted. I would say so noted, and your request is again denied.
Okay. Thank you. Detective Cepeda, read your report. Oh, Mr. Aronson, sorry.
Yeah, there should be 2 licensees because both of them were summoned. I'm only seeing the one.
Thank you, Mr. Aronson. And I neglected to address that issue. The board may recall that prior to you all being noticed that this violation was pending, that you approved a removal of officer and took the resident agent off. We don't know where that person is. He was removed from the business some time ago. And what happened, the board approved the removal. While we were waiting to receive the paperwork to have him removed, my clients advised me of the pending of this violation. And in, I believe, proper form, we notified you that this violation was coming. You had not received it as yet. In consultation with my clients, we felt that that was the appropriate thing to do, to be forthright with you, knowing that you don't change officers when there's a violation pending. But we don't have any control over that gentleman. We don't know where he is. He's not part of the business.
Well, Mr. Chairman, would you like to proceed forward with that knowledge, knowing that you're unable to contact the other licensee?
Yeah. Unless you would recommend another course. Yeah, I think we should move forward.
Okay. We'll do
Thank you. And I will say that on behalf of Mr. Patel, he will waive any appeal grounds because Mr. Chandamar, I believe it or not, is not here. As I say, the board granted his removal. And I think if we hadn't have let you know that this was coming, you probably would have removed him. But again, we felt it was the proper thing to let you know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bittner. I appreciate the explanation. Detective Cepeda, let's go ahead and read the report into the record.
Okay, sir, thank you. On February 6th, 2021, myself, Detective Mount, and Detective Mountcastle were conducting alcohol compliance checks of local retail businesses within Anne Arundel County. We directed a confidential source, 18 years of age. The subject entered the establishment identified as the Place liquor store located at 8318 Telegraph Road, Severn, Maryland. That's in Anne Arundel County. We observed a confidential source enter the business. The confidential source went into the establishment, picked out an 18-pack of Bud Light beer, and took it to the front sales counter. The confidential source was given official Anne Arundel County funds and was able to purchase the Bud Light product beer from the clerk. During such action, the clerk did not ask the confidential source for identification. Confidential source then exited the business and immediately turned over the alcoholic beverage to myself, Detective Middleton. We know through our training, knowledge, and experience that Bud Light beer is an alcoholic beverage. Detective Mountcastle and I then entered the store, identified ourselves as police officers, and subsequently identified the clerk as Mr. Pradip Patel via his Maryland driver's license. Mr. Patel vehemently denied that he made any type of violation whatsoever. And also let it be noted that at first, Mr. Patel was uncooperative and demanded to see the confidential source. Once I explained to Mr. Patel that that failure to cooperate will result in an additional notification of the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board will be notified and immediate suspension of his liquor license. Mr. Patel stated that he understood and then allowed us to inspect the liquor license certificate. A photograph was taken of the Anne Arundel County liquor license, which was properly displayed behind the wall. The photograph was taken of Mr. Pradip, the driver's license, and it was attached to this report. The photograph was taken of the Bud Light beer and was subsequently destroyed. A copy of the report was forwarded to the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board. This case is closed.
Okay, thank you, Detective. Conclude your report.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Bittner, any questions of Detective Cepeda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pearley. Detective Cepeda, this incident happened at 14:51 hours. Is that correct?
Well, that's what time the detail actually started. That's not the exact time.
Your report says
that's an approximate time.
Okay. So what time did it happen?
It happened after 14:15 hours.
I'm sorry?
What happened after 14:15 hours? That's just an approximate time when the detail began.
Okay, so
if you noted in the previous, I'm sorry. If you noticed in the previous report, it was the same time. That's the time the actual detail began.
So you don't know what time you were actually there? Is that right?
No, sir. Not exactly, no.
Now, when you went in, you characterized Mr. Pradip Patel as denying the sale. He was upset. Is that right?
He was quite animated. He just denied that he made any type of violation, that he did card the confidential source.
Okay. And then when you explained to him what was going on, he cooperated, correct?
Yes. Once I explained to him, that the failure to comply would result in further violations, he then, showed us the liquor license, and that was pretty much the end of the operation.
Okay, and I want to make sure I understand this. He never failed to comply with any of your directives. Is that correct?
No, not officially, no.
Okay. He just expressed some animation and surprise and denial that he had served a minor.
Well, that he demanded quite, vehemently that he wanted to see the source, which was not going to happen.
Okay, all right.
I missed the last part of that. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You broke up you didn't just, what was not going to happen?
No, he was quite animated and demanded to see the confidential source, and actually came out at one point and took pictures of our vehicles, and we kind of explained to him at that point that has to cooperate.
Okay, thank you.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bittner. Chairman Maloney, any questions of the detective?
Just, you mentioned approximately 14, 15 hours. What was roughly when you were in the store? Do you have any thought on that? Was it 3 o'clock? Was it between?
Yeah, it was approximately 3 p.m. No later than 3:30.
Okay. And you also mentioned that he denied that he forgot to card the confidential source.
Well, at first he said that he did, and he properly asked for identification, and then he came outside, took our vehicle, denied, refused to hand over his copy of his liquor license for us to take a picture of, and then when we explained to him that if he failed to do so, it would create further violations with the County Liquor Board. Then he complied.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Chairman?
No, that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioners Pilkins or Duffy, any questions?
This is Commissioner Duffy. I just want clarification. Did I not understand him to say that Mr. Patel went outside and took a picture of the vehicle?
Yeah, he came out to try to demand to see the confidential source, and was taking pictures of our vehicle, and we had already identified ourselves as police, and at that point we came in, asked Mr. Patel to come inside, and we explained to him that further conflict would result in violations.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want clarification on that.
Yes, sir.
I have no other questions.
Commissioner Pilkins, that's a very vital piece of information for me. Thank you.
All right. There are no additional questions. We'll turn the floor over to Mr. Bittner. You can proceed forward by way of proper testimony or a combination of both.
Well, again, I'll renew my motions for no action as to the failure to provide the information in the form of the hearing with reading a report not substantiated by corroborating evidence as to the minor, and I'll submit on that for no action. And then I would like to be heard in litigation.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, would you like to make a ruling on that motion?
I would, and will deny that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bittner, go right ahead in mitigation.
Certainly, thank you. At the outset, if I may, I think the board, we've heard the term uncooperative, okay, from the officer. Most respectfully, I suggest, gentlemen, that is an inartful application of the term. It is not uncooperative. It is never uncooperative for a citizen, a property owner, to inquire of law enforcement what's going on. It's never uncooperative for a citizen property owner, when their property is at stake, to inquire of a law enforcement officer as to what's happening. So that simply is not, as a matter of law, uncooperative. The Court of Appeals of Maryland has held that law enforcement has no protected privacy interest in not having their pictures taken. It is constitutionally permissible for a citizen to take videotape, audio tape, a law enforcement officer. Unfortunately, I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't think we were going to delve into that. It wasn't in the report. I wasn't expecting it. It was an add-on to the reading of the report, but that's simply not being uncooperative. What's salient is that after Officer Cepeda explained to Mr. Patel what was going on, he complied, as he knows he's required to. The officers were properly identified, he understood, and he complied. And he's here today, really, sadly, I have to tell you, a near beaten man. What was going on March the 6th, at that very moment when the confidential informant came into the store, was he was participating in a video funeral for his brother-in-law's father. So he was actually watching the funeral while he was trying to run his business. This is a family-run business. You may recall 2 hearings ago, you granted a license to his son for the Eggspectation restaurant at Wall Chapel. He's an owner-operator. He's there all the time. Unfortunately, an error was committed by him on that day when his mind was elsewhere. It was elsewhere, he tells me, because he had recently brought both his mother and father home from the hospital after they were in intensive care suffering from COVID conditions. It's been a difficult time for the Patel family. That's not an excuse. That's not a defense. He committed a violation. And as the board well knows, these violations are generally a product of human error, human factor. And I'm not going to tell you again that he's done all these things because he's already done. He's had the a bar and liquor store, I believe, about 8 years. Is that right? How long have you had it? 8 years? 5 years. 5 years. It's had 5 years. So my apologies. He has card readers. He has a policy. He has signage. And unfortunately, his guard was down that day. He has not been before the board for some 3 years. Again, our calculations are some 500,000 sales without incident. And we would ask the board to impose a reprimand in this case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bittner. Mr. Chairman, any questions of Mr. Bittner's client or Mr. Bittner?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioners Duffy or Pilkins, any questions?
Commissioner Pilkins for Mr. Bittner. Our records show that there was you pled guilty, or your client pled guilty and got a $500 fine on August 10th, 2020.
That's correct. I believe that was a COVID ticket. It was a COVID violation, not a sales to minors. And so it hasn't been before you in a sales to minors in 3 years.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Commissioner Duffy, any questions?
This is Commissioner Duffy. I have no questions.
And if there are no additional questions, we'll turn it over to the board for discussion, deliberation, and decision. And I would remind the board to clarify for the record with any decision whether or not that's going to include costs, court costs associated with the fines.
Just in a general sense, we've heard 3 cases, and for the most part, we normally do include the court cost, and I would strongly recommend that the court costs be considered in those 3. I don't know if we have to redo it, but I think we bill them court costs. because it's normally part of the package, but
As to Odenton Liquors, I have no objection. I believe that's the rules. So I understood as to Odenton that was included, and I'll submit on that.
I just wanted to make sure for the record going forward that we're completely clear on that.
okay, so any discussion from the commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Duffy. I'd like to make a motion that because of the seriousness of this particular case, that an individual did go outside his establishment to confront the CS, as well as try and take pictures, that we level a fine of $350 plus code costs.
I'll second that, Commissioner Philpott.
Okay. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, Chief Wayne Harris, I'm going to call the next case, Telegraph Liquors, known as NND Inc. Police, Desi, President, Secretary, and Treasurer. Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, Detective Middleton, number 1061, Inspector Alvin Few, Class D license for beer, wine, and liquor, dancing, and Sunday licenses, 8318 Telegraph Road, Odenton 21113. Restrictions are, as of 2/24/2004, all employees and licensees must be certified in the state with an approved alcohol awareness program. Violations are: 1, violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County, Chapter 4, Section 4.01A, minors, RE, Anne Arundel County Police Department. Report number 21-704212 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Middleton, number 1061. The incident dated February 6th, 2021. Second violation of alcoholic beverage. 1, Titles 1 through 12, Annotated Code of Maryland. Title 6, Section 6-304. Selling and providing alcoholic beverages to an individual under the age of 21 years. Reference RE, Anne Arundel County Police Department Report 21-704212 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, and Detective Middleton, number 1061. The incident dated February 6th, 2021. Anyone wishing to testify for or against, please step forward and raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Bittner, if you'll,
I do.
Client to speak up, we can't hear him. Did he say yes?
Keep your voice up.
Yes.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Nilas Desai, address 7741 Telegraph Road, Severn, Maryland, 21144.
Okay, very good. Detectives, would you identify yourself, please?
Detective Thomas Middleton, Anne Arundel County Police Department, currently assigned to Western District. My badge number 1061. Detective Mountcastle, Anne Arundel County Police Department, ID 1155.
Thank you, detectives. Okay, Mr. Fraley.
All right, thank you, Chief Inspector Harris. Mr. Bittner, unless you have any preliminary matters for this one, we'll proceed forward with that check.
Thank you. I would, and for the record, I'm Richard Bittner, BITTNER. I represent the licensee in the establishment Telegraph Liquors. I would make a motion preliminarily for no action. I'll incorporate the arguments previously made in the matters of Odenton Liquors and the place as to the propriety of reading the report, the propriety of the test of not testifying, simply of reading. I also want the record to reflect that We requested that the board provide us copies of all evidence. We made that request on April the 5th. The board promptly replied and sent a copy of the report, 6-page report. No documentation, as has been the board's practice for some 25 years regarding the bona fides of the purported confidential source were provided. So we would make a motion for no action based on those grounds, incorporating our arguments previously made. Submit.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, would you like to make a ruling on the preliminary motion?
I'm going to deny that preliminary motion, and let's proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Detective Middleton, could you please go ahead and read your report for the record? Is this the COVID-19 procedure? There will be no waive.
Yes, sir. Detective Middleton, Anne Arundel County Police Department, badge number 1061. This was February 6th of this year, 2021, at approximately 2:15 in the afternoon. Detective Mountcastle and I were working Operation Save, and we directed a confidential source, 18 years of age, to enter Telegraph Liquor Store, 7741 Telegraph Road in Severn, which is here in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. We observed the confidential source enter the business. The CS went into the store, picked out an 18-pack of Bud Light beer, and took it to the front counter. The CS was given official Anne Arundel County funds. It was able to purchase the Bud Light beer from the clerk. The clerk did not ask the CS for identification. The CS exited the business, immediately turned over the alcoholic beverage to us. I know through my training, knowledge, and experience that Bud Light beer is an alcoholic beverage. Detective Mountcastle and I entered the store, identified ourselves as police officers, and identified the clerk as the owner. I'm sorry on pronunciation, Nalish Kumar Desai, date of birth of October 23rd, 1965, via his Maryland driver's license he provided. Mr. Desai advised that he forgot the card to CS to us when we told him while we were inside the establishment. He was very cooperative and stated that he made a mistake and should have carded the CS. A photograph was taken of him and his driver's license, and they were attached to the report submitted to the liquor board. And a photograph was taken of the Bud Light beer, and then it was destroyed. A photograph was taken of the Anne Arundel County liquor license, which was properly hanging on the wall behind the cashier area. All the events happened in Severn, Anne Arundel County, Maryland. And I would just add that our confidential source was verified through MVA documents that confirm his age of 18 years of age. That would be my statement of facts.
Thank you, Detective Middleton. Mr. Bittner, any questions for the detective?
I do. For the purposes of the records, I'm going to renew the motion as to the form of the testimony, the reading of the report wrote, and I'll submit on that.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, would you like to make a ruling on the renewed motion that the board take no action?
Is he read? I'm sorry, I couldn't quite pick it all up.
Sure. My understanding is that Mr. Bittner is renewing his motion that the board take no action.
And is this in regard to what you said prior to this?
It pertains at this point, this motion, particularly to the form of Officer Middleton being allowed to testify just with a reading of his report, not by question and answer, as is the customary form of direct examination. Submit on that.
Chairman, would you like to make a ruling on that? Would you like me to?
No, I'll go ahead and deny that also.
All right, Mr. Bittner, any questions from the detective?
Thank you. Detective Middleton, do you recall that in the course of your discussion with Mr. Desai, and he had indicated he made a mistake, he also stated to you words to the effect that he thought he knew the confidential source, that it was a regular customer named John. Do you have any recollection of that?
I do not. I'm sorry. I do not recall.
I understand. But your report does indicate that he was very cooperative.
Yes, he was. He was very, very cooperative.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bittner. Mr. Chairman, any questions of Detective Middleton?
I don't have questions.
Commissioners Duffy or Pilkins, any questions of Detective Middleton at this time?
No, Commissioner Pilkins has no questions of the detective or the police officer.
Commissioner Duffy, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. Bittner, the floor is yours. You can proceed forward by way of proffer or testimony or combination of both.
Certainly. For the record, renew the motions, submit, no argument, understand they're denied. And we would like to be heard in mitigation.
And yeah, for the record, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you make a ruling on that motion.
I'm going to leave it up to you, James.
Okay, we'll deny that motion, Mr. Bitt, and we'll let you proceed forward with your case.
Thank you. As you heard, Mr. Desai was very cooperative. That's Detective Middleton's wording, very cooperative. He readily admitted he made a mistake. We have a video on which I won't trouble you with of the incident. And you can see it was very busy that day. It was a line. Mr. Desai points out, he reaches out to this confidential source who's about third back in the line. He calls out John, motions him up. He does the sale. He thought he knew him. And again, we were talking, Mr. Desai and I, about the mask issue, and he thought he knew him. And as I counseled him, the mask simply is a heightened factor. The mask requires the licensee to take additional steps. He made a mistake. He told you that. Again, with this client, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing all these proactive things because he already does them. And you know he does them because he hasn't been before you for a minor sales to minor violation since 2015. He's owned the establishment since 2007. He's my client, he's my friend, but I would suggest most respectfully that he's one of the better operators in the county. Given all of that, given that he has some 6 years, and by our calculation, almost 1 million points of sale during that time without an incident, that he was very cooperative. Certainly, this is a case, most respectfully, that I would ask you to impose a reprimand in the cause.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, any questions for Mr. Bittner's client?
No questions.
Commissioners, any additional questions for Mr. Bittner or his client?
Commissioner Pilkins has no additional questions for the council.
Commissioner Duffy have no questions.
Okay. If there are no additional questions, we will move for deliberation and decision at this point in time.
Okay, any thoughts from the commissioner? I have to tell you, you're right. The mask is an issue, obviously, during this time, and it's a lot harder to look at somebody and say, hey, he's a minor, but all that we have to be a little more vigilant. So anyway, I'll entertain a motion from the commissioners if someone has one with regard to this.
Would move that, that we accept the information that we received and place a fine of $250 plus cost.
Those in favor? Or, I'm sorry.
How much was that?
We need a second.
250? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a motion from Mr. Pilkins. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion's carried. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. This is Chief Inspector Wayne Harris calling the next case. Wallchapel Wines, known as Wallchapel Wines, Inc. Sanjay Jatain, President and Secretary. Anthony Patrick Figolosi, Vice President. Shyam Gurung, Clerk. Detective Sapita, number 1239. Detective White, Sergeant White, number 1329. Detective Middleton, 1061. Detective Mountcastle, 1155. Our inspector is Jason McCarthy. This is a Class A license for beer, wine, and liquor, beer, wine, and spirit tasting, and Sunday license as well. Located 2646 Chapel Lake Drive, Gambrills, Maryland. There are no restrictions on this license. The violations are violation 1 of the rules and regulation of the Board of License Commissions for Anne Arundel County, Chapter 4, Section 4.01A, minors, reference Anne Arundel County Police Department 21-704-208 by Detective Mountcastle, number 1155, Detective Sapita, number 1239, Sergeant White, number 1329, and Detective Middleton, number 1061, dated February 6th, 2021. Number 2, violation of alcoholic beverage 1, Titles 1 through 12, Annotated Code of Maryland. Title 6, Section 6-304, selling or providing alcoholic beverage to an individual under the age of 21. RE, Anne Arundel County Police Department 21-704-208 by Detective Mountcastle, 1155, and Detective Sapita, 1239, Sergeant White, number 1329, and Detective Middleton, number 1061, incident February 6th, 2021. Okay, I'm going to ask all the individuals testifying, please raise your right hand.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Absolutely.
Looks like there's 2 other licensees. They were in the waiting room, but I do not see them as logged in at the time. Linda, do you know if they're having issues?
Looks like Miss Carter is having an issue with audio. She just sent a message that says she has no audio.
It's not on our end, unfortunately. Oh, there's the other gentleman.
I think I saw the clerk joining.
Miss Carter, we can see you, you're talking, but we can't hear you, man.
I think she's going to try to call in here.
How about if we take a 1-minute break here? I'm going to get a better.
Okay.
And we lost the other gentleman too.
Let me try to text them. Give me a second.
Mr. Gurung, if you want to put your hands down for a minute, you can, sir. That's okay. Put your hand down for a minute. It's got to be getting tiring.
Sanjeev Jatan, 1405 Paradox Court.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. We're taking a brief recess here. We try to get Ms. Carter on here with us.
Let's try. Let me try something.
And you lost her.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ms. Carter. Ms. Carter?
She's muted.
Oh, she just muted.
Okay. Ms. Carter, you're muted, but we did hear you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Okay, gonna be
All
a
right.
weird way of doing this.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start back at the oath and repeat the oath, and then will everybody raise their
Let's
right-
make sure we have everybody with us, Mr. Harris, before we think we've got Mr. here. I see.
We are missing one licensee. They were here, but they're no longer connected. Anthony.
They're not, that the licensee isn't in the waiting room?
Correct.
I would proffer that the missing licensee has nothing to add to this.
At the chairman's discretion, we can proceed forward if the other licensee isn't able to hop on. If they do hop on, we can swear them in at that time. If they are going to testify, but as Mr. Carter's proffered, there's really nothing else that licensee would add.
Whatever you recommend, Mr. Paley.
All right, let's proceed forward with this by administering the oath. Sorry for the delay. Mr. Harris, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Fraley. Chief Harris, please raise your right hands now. Mr. Gurung, Mr. Jatain, go ahead and thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Gurung?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you do?
Yes.
Okay, please state your name and addresses for the record.
Sanjeev Jatan, 140 Alex Court, Crownsville, Maryland, 21032.
Thank you. Mr. Gurung?
Shyam Kumar Gurung, Alar Court, 7902 G3.
Okay, you can put your hand down, sir. Thank you. Okay, officers, please identify yourselves.
Detective Middleton, Anne Arundel County Police Department, currently assigned to Western District. My ID number is 1061.
Thank you.
Detective Mountcastle, Anne Arundel County Police Department, ID number 1155.
Detective Charles Pepetta, Anne Arundel County Police Department, Western District, ID number 1239.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Fraley.
All right, Ms. Carter, do you want to put your name on the record? You're muted, Ms. Carter. I know it's probably challenging with a phone and a computer.
Good evening, gentlemen. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Linda Carter. I'm with Carter Law, and I'm here on behalf of Whitechapel. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. I don't know what the problem is. This is the same computer I use every night, but somehow it's not working today.
No problem. We're glad you're with us. Detective Middleton, if you could go ahead and read the report in the record, as this is a COVID-19 hearing, there is no waiver.
Okay, Detective Middleton, Anne Arundel County Police, badge number 1061. Commissioners and board, this is on February 6th of 2021 at approximately 3:06 p.m. in the afternoon. Detective Mountcastle, Detective Pepetta, and Sergeant White and I were working Operation Save, conducting alcohol sales compliance checks of retail businesses. We directed a confidential source who was 18 years of age, who we also verified through the Department of Maryland Motor Vehicle records to confirm documentation of his age. He entered Whitechapel Village Wine and Spirits at 2646 Chapel Lake Drive in Gambrels, which is Anne Arundel County, Maryland. We observed the confidential source enter the business. He went into the store, picked out a 15-pack of Blue Moon beer, and took it to the front counter. the CS was given official Anne Arundel County funds, was able to purchase the Blue Moon beer from the clerk. The clerk did not ask the CS for identification. The CS exited the business immediately, turned over the alcoholic beverages to us. I know through my training, knowledge, and experience that Blue Moon beer is an alcoholic beverage. Detective Mountcastle, Detective Cepeda, and I entered the store and identified ourselves as police officers and identified the clerk as owner Shyam Gurung with a Maryland driver's license, born in January 28th of 1970. He was very cooperative and stated that he did not ask the CS for identification. He advised he'd been working as a clerk for approximately 1 year and had the ID training. A photograph was taken of Mr. Gurung and his driver's license and are attached to the report that was submitted to the liquor board. A photograph was taken of the Blue Moon beer and it was subsequently destroyed. The Anne Arundel County Liquor Board license was hanging properly behind the cashier area, and a photograph was taken of that. All the events did occur in Gambrills in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, and that would be my statement of facts.
Thank you, Detective Middleton. Ms. Carter, do you have any questions? I don't know if she's still on, Mr. Aronson.
Yeah, I believe we lost her.
So this is Sanjeev Jatan. I heard the detective saying Honor Gurung is a clerk.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. We want to make sure that your attorney's here before we proceed forward. Here she comes. I think she's still having the audio issue.
Hello?
We have you, Ms.
Hello?
Carter.
Oh, I give up. I actually had sound coming from my computer and then it disappeared again. So we have no questions of the police officers and we accept their report as given.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carter. Mr. Chairman, any questions of Detective Middleton?
No questions.
Commissioner Wilkins or Duffy, any questions?
No questions from Commissioner Pilkins.
Commissioner Duffy, I have no questions.
Okay. All right, Ms. Carter, the floor is yours. You can proceed for proffer, testimony, or a combination.
I think we'll proffer with the board's permission. And I once again apologize for the computer issues tonight. I do on both my phone and the computer, so it's interesting. And hopefully you guys can all hear me. We acknowledge the incident happened, and as the police officer said, our cashier was in fact alcohol certified. In fact, the store policy is that no one is allowed to work the registers that have not been alcohol awareness certified. The store also has a policy that everybody is supposed to be carded. And unfortunately, as we all know, in this particular night, that did not happen. The store has a scanner, albeit not effective. But a scanner is only good if it's used. So my client is working with his POS system, have a POS integrated scanner installed, so that the moment an alcoholic beverage is brought to the register and scanned, the transaction would stop until the valid ID was presented and accepted by the computer. My client has signs throughout the store reminding both patrons and employees that if you're not 21, don't buy. The client has deliberately decided not to have lottery and is getting rid of his cigarettes because he really wants to focus on selling the product that this board regulates. My client spends 30 hours or more a week actually in the store, and he's got cameras that when I'm hoping that his phone works a lot better than mine seems to have wanted to work tonight, but allows him to monitor the store progress even when he's not in the store. The clerk involved was not terminated. However, he has been relegated to stocking. He is not allowed to work the registers until he has gone through retraining, and the POS system has the integrated scanning system. Have I missed anything, Sanjeev?
No, I think you're pretty good. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, that would be our case, and we would rest on that.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Mr. Chairman, any questions for Ms. Carter or the licensees?
Yeah, I do. Just for clarification, you mentioned the scanner and you were describing how it worked. You bring it up to the cash register, it's scanned, and if it's automatically, we check the ID, correct?
That's correct. That will be the new system.
So that's going to be the new system?
Correct.
Okay. So that when will that be installed?
He's working with his POS system to integrate. Sanjeev, do you have a date?
So I'm waiting for the vendor so that we can start testing. The current issue is if we use the testing software, it kind of machine hangs. So we're waiting for the technology to give a new answer. So whenever it's ID, the system can tell me, hey, you know what, this is this underage, or he's good to go.
Okay, so that system will be installed within the next couple of months, or?
Yeah, next couple of months. There will be a trial run.
Okay. There's just a lot of noise in the background. I don't know what's going on, but.
I have barking dogs to complicate everything.
No, it's more than dogs are no problem. It was some other issue, but okay. Next couple of months, you'll have that system in place. Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Spilkins or Duffy, any additional questions?
Commissioner Duffy have no questions.
Spilkins has no questions either.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll turn it over to the board for delivery.
And any comments, additional comments by the commissioners? If none, I'll entertain a motion. Or I'll actually give a motion. I'll make a motion that we fine the Whitechapel Village $250 for the offense and court costs. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Duffy.
Thank you. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Spilkins, aye.
Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Again, I apologize for the delay. You all have a pleasant and safe evening.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Detective Cepeda, this is all I had. May I get excused?
Mr. Chairman, Detective Zapata and the detectives are asking to be excused, sir.
If they're finished, they are excused.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Nice
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Wayne Harris calling the next case. Next case is Blas Supermarket and Restaurant, known as Martinez Sanchez, Inc. Eduardo Blas Sanchez, President, Secretary, Treasurer, Colin M. Robertson III, Assistant Secretary, Leonard Matthias, Chief Building Inspector, and Michael Williams, Chief Building Inspector. These are in reference to a Class H beer, wine, and entertainment and Sunday license, 1701 Crane Highway South in Glen Burnie, Maryland. There are restrictions on this license. They are as follows: 1, maximum of 27 seats. Alcohol can only be served in conjunction with food. Hours of service are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sunday. Beer and wine only. No liquor in any form can be sold. Only entertainment permitted is TV. Number 2, signs in English and Spanish to read beer and wine cannot be removed from the premises. No carry-out beer or wine can be sold, and the signs to be approved by the board and posted conspicuously in the lunch. This is a carryover from a previous hearing. The violations are as follows. Violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County. Chapter 3, Section 3.02, cooperation, reference to the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County, violation notice number 2275, a letter from Chief Inspector Wayne Harris dated January 7th, 2021, and a final notice from the Department of Inspections and Permits dated October 23rd, 2019. Number 2 is a violation of the rules of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County, Chapter 4, Section 4.18, alterations, reference the Board of License for Anne Arundel County, violation notice number 2275, letter from Chief Wayne Harris dated January 7th, 2021. And a final notice from the Department of Inspections and Permits dated October 23rd, 2019. And third, violation of the rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County. Chapter 4, Section 4.16, illegal conduct, reference Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County. Violation notice number 2275 from the letter from the Chief Inspector Wayne Harris dated January 7, 2021, and the final notice from the Department of Inspection dated October 23rd, 2019. Mr. Aronson, if you'll swear everybody in, I'll also raise my right hand.
Sure. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Chief Inspector Wayne Harris with the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board, 2660 Riva Road, Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, Mr. Bittner,
I'm Richard Bittner, B-I-T-T-N-E-R. I represent the licensee in the establishment, Eduardo Blas Supermarket and La Tropita Restaurant.
And if your client could just put his name and address on the record too, please, Mr. Bittner.
State your name and address.
Eduardo Blas, my address is 9203 Brigard Chip, Laurel, Maryland.
Okay, thank you. And as Chief Inspector Harris mentioned, this is a carryover from February's hearing, the request of Mr. Bittner. Mr. Bittner, we'll turn it over to you to proceed forward by way. Fill the board in on what's happened since the last hearing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Praley, Chairman, members of the board. Initially, if I may just confirm for the purposes of the record, on March the 23rd, we submitted 4 exhibits. They were the permits for the pavilion, electrical, mechanical, and building. I moved those in and want to confirm your receipt. Additionally, I received yesterday at 10:35 p.m., though I didn't see it till later this morning, a very detailed summary report from Daniel Valdez, the architect in charge of the program. He included additional new information received since March the 23rd regarding the health department application and permitting process, as well as.
Can I interrupt you, Mr. Bittner? Mr. Bittner, can I interrupt you momentarily?
Absolutely.
I'm looking at a violation hearing right now. I don't know, is there some other piece of information for us?
Well, yes, sir. I believe when we were before you last time, as I understood it, and we were facing violations for cooperation, alterations, all emanating from problems getting the necessary county permits. As I understood it, the board continued the hearing to give Mr. Blas an opportunity to try to cure those building permit issues. And that's what I'm attempting to address right now, that he has done that. March the 23rd, we submitted to you the pavilion permit, electrical permit, mechanical permit, and building permit. And I just want to confirm that you've received them and they're part of the record. And then I also received additional information from the the architect. He emailed it to my office yesterday, Monday, April the 12th at 10:35 p.m. I did not see it till I returned from court this morning to my office at about 11 a.m. We sent that over to the board at 12:14 p.m. And I'm just, for the purposes of the record, I want to confirm that the board has received it and it's admitted as exhibits in this case. I'm asking that any 5-day rule be waived. Good cause shown, and I embodied this in our letter that we forwarded to you on today at 12:14, was again, the architect is Mr. David Valdez, is the one substantially in charge of the project, and he provided me the information at 10:35 yesterday evening, and I sent it to you right away. It's material, it's relevant, it's important. There was no way my client could have provided it to the board in any other fashion because he did not have control of the documents. So I submit those most respectfully, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, to show that the permitting process is well underway. He's been approved, I believe, for electrical and mechanical. The report reflects that the Department of Health is coming back on April the 26th for a final. So I believe he is in compliance with what the board wants him to do. And as you may recall from our previous hearing, none of the failures to obtain the licenses were intentional. In fact, you'll recall that he had obtained a number of the permits but had not been able to complete the work on time and secure the final. And that as a result of COVID, basically, gentlemen, you'll recall is that Mr. Blass had abandoned at that time his intention to move the supermarket to the basement and expand the restaurant and have a pavilion outside, and he just stopped using it. He put up tape, didn't use the basement. Now, with the help of Mr. Valdez, actively involved as the architect, the permits being issued, we expect that he'll be in full compliance on February the 26th when they come back out for a re-inspection.
You mean April?
April 26th.
April, I'm sorry, April 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner, for tolerating my question.
No, sir. All questions are good ones. I think someone told me the only bad question is the one you don't ask.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions at this time for Mr. Bittner from his clients?
I don't have any questions at the moment, but reserve some comments for later.
Sure. Commissioners Pilkins, Commissioner Duffy, any questions?
Commissioner Duffy, I have no questions.
Commissioner Pilkins has no questions at this point, but I'll reserve some time later.
And Mr. Bittner, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, in summary, I would simply add, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that the failure to comply initially was largely driven by COVID, I think exclusively driven by COVID and the government shutdown. And unfortunately, as I understand it from my client, Mr. Valdez stopped working. He wasn't responsive to Mr. Blass, and everything just kind of went left. And fortunately, because as Commissioner Pilkins may recall at the last hearing, there were substantial improvements made. And Mr. Blass, before the last hearing, was really to the point where he was just going to give up. He wasn't going to use the basement. He just felt it wasn't economically viable. The permitting process was just too intensive. Now, the board's prompting, my assistance, Mr. Valdez's assistance, he's got that straight. and he looks very optimistically towards carrying out what the board approved him to do almost 2 years ago. The board extended that at our request because of COVID and the permitting processes, and that is to turn the basement into a top-class bodega, small market Spanish restaurant, and expand what is really good homemade food. I don't know if anyone's had an opportunity to go to the Trampita, but you'll find it's like, you know, being in Central America's grandmother's kitchen. It's all handmade, it's all homemade. So he's looking very forward to expanding that. He has a very loyal following. So I would ask you to take no action in terms of any consequences to his license, any sanction to his license, issue a reprimand, have him pay the cost of the proceedings that the board has incurred, and continue to monitor his progress. And we hope on April the 26th, he's going to receive final approval.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner. Chief Inspector Harris, do you have anything that you would like to bring to the board's attention at this time?
Yes, I guess in reference to what Mr. Bittner says was sent to the board very late in this matter. I had an opportunity to look it over too, and there's several concerning issues, not necessarily involved with the basement or the lower area and the renovations taking place there. The health department, we know, is coming back out to re-inspect, but the pavilion, which is what drew my attention to the establishment initially, being so close to Crane Highway, there is a letter that gives some direction and some suggestion that it's not going to be approved, if I'm reading it correctly, and I am somewhat familiar with the construction process. Looks like it's not going to be approved on its face and will probably have to be moved to another location, maybe disassembled. That was one of the violations that I cited or based the citations on. The other was the tent. The tent has not been approved, but I think that's pending the health department approval on all other matters, because inspections and permits will not approve the tent permit until everything else is cleared up. I think the most concerning is the pavilion outside, and also the health department is concerned about the use of his mobile kitchen. It's evidently being stationary, and they're concerned about that. I just wanted to point those out. These appear to be some of the concerns by inspections and permits and Ms. Chamberlain at the health department.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Bittner, based on those words, do you have any questions of Mr. Harris?
Only to echo that I think Mr. Glass, I know Mr. Glass has the same concerns. The pavilion is not in use. What's happened with the tent, the board may recall, is because he had a violation for the pavilion, they would not authorize him to use the tent. So he's not using the tent. He went to great expense to have it constructed and get it permitted, but they would never authorize him to use it. So he hasn't been using it. He hasn't been using the pavilion. He understands that it may have to be moved, it may have to be torn down, and he's going to follow whatever zoning and the authorities tell him that he has to do. Is that right, sir?
Sí, ya mañana creo que la vamos a remover.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bittner. Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions for Chief Inspector Harris?
You're muted, Chairman.
Sorry about that. No, I don't have any specific questions for Mr. Harris, but I do want to make some statements, if that's possible at this point, in relative to Mr. Harris, because basically it all started with the inspector going and, as I understand it, the large wooden structure he noticed and a canvas tent that all of a sudden appeared in front of the establishment. And that was confirmed that the building neither had any permits for that. Now, as Bittner would say, at the board's prompting, maybe we moved forward in order to get the permits, but the permit kind of comes with something called permission or authority. So we discovered there were no permits for those things, went into a couple of different reasons why there was permits could not be issued because of failure to obey the letters on previous violations. So yeah, indeed, there were problems with these permits. There's no question about it. And I think if we didn't make the notice that there were none, that none of this probably would have happened. But the bottom line is, it did happen. And in past testimony, if you can go through all of the what I call fog and fluff, Mr. Bittner indicated that indeed conceded that those permits were not there. So that's where we need to be, not necessarily where we're going as far as the liquor board goes. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Pilkins or Duffy, any questions of Mr. Harris right now?
Yes, Commissioner Duffy, I have no questions to Inspector Harris.
I guess my question is that the pavilion has been denied, and why is it still up? I guess that's my question. Is there plans to remove it, take it down, haul it away, that type of thing? I'd like to have a little bit more depth on that.
Is this to Chief Inspector Harris, or is this a question that you'd like to ask of Mr. Bittner and his clients?
I might be able to answer that if you wish me to. Mr. Bittner, are you okay with that?
Well, certainly, Chief, you can intune whatever you'd like. If I may, my understanding what's going on with the pavilion, and again, this is based on Mr. Valdez's report, is that he is working, the next to last paragraph of his memo to me, finally, we had the new pavilion permit reviews completed with comments. That will affect the location of the pavilion from where it was built prior to applying for the permit. I've attached copies of those reviews. I forwarded them to you. And we'll see how Eduardo wants to proceed with the required changes for approval. So you are absolutely correct, Commissioner Pilkins, that pavilion may be coming down. What I expect is going to be happening in the very near future, it's either going to be approved with a new location or new whatever, different whatever the county requires, or if Mr. Blass believes it's just not economically viable, though I think he is, I think he wants to have the pavilion properly permitted, it'll be moved. He's indicating in the affirmative.
Thank you. The reason I asked the question out of turn here is because that's an important part of my decision process tonight, why that's still up and the difficulties that having. It appeared to me from what I've read that that pavilion fails in many different areas. Fails in many different areas for the permit. Sorry.
If I may, gentlemen, my concern as the chief inspector for the liquor board and representative for the liquor board, my biggest concern is not them getting the permits. That's something they can work through, inspections and permits in the health department and so forth. But my biggest concern has always been the health and safety and welfare of those people in and around the establishment. And we've had conversations with Mr. Blas and his son Oscar, as well as others. Because it wasn't built by permit, and they've done a pretty good job. They had construction tape, if you will, or yellow tape around it. But again, my concern is because it hasn't been approved by inspectors of the building and inspections division, they need to make sure it's not utilized in any way, shape, or form. until the county tells them what to do with it, or they decide what to do with it. That's all.
Agreed.
Okay. Based on that, Mr. Bittner, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Mr. Blass is an owner operator. It's a family business, as the chief indicated. He's dealt with his son Oscar, who's actually here. I don't think he's on camera. He's doing everything he can to remedy the situation. The pavilion is not in use because he understands the importance of the health, safety, welfare of the community.
Thank you. Any members of the board, including the chairman, have any questions for Mr. Bittner or for his client?
I'm just curious, moving forward. I mean, just back up for a minute. I'm just curious how all of this happens. I know we're in a COVID. I know he's a small operator, but there are resources that are available to get these kinds of things in order. And I mean, things are being built all around, and they have permits, and but here just didn't happen.
Regretfully, it did not, Mr. Chairman. And as I advanced in our last hearing, I think it purely was COVID. The architect, as I said, just disappeared. I know I sent him a number of emails. I left him a number of messages. He was non-responsive to me. In fact, I'll tell you that Mr. Blass was to the point of engaging another concern to overtake this project when Mr. Valdez got back involved the end of March. And since then, he's been very engaged. He represented to me that he had a whole host of difficulties with COVID, his business being shut down, family members who were ill. So I have to accept that at face value. There's nothing indicating to the contrary. And since it's been brought back to the forefront, since things have begun to open up, Mr. Blass has taken, along with Mr. Valdez, this matter to heart. And we're close, I believe, to achieving his goal and the board's goal of having full compliance.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Duffy. In reference to Chief Harris' comment about the health, the welfare, and the safety of individuals dealing with this pavilion will not be open for public use. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Bender, that this pavilion will not, under any circumstances, be of use?
Not unless or until it's properly permitted. It's been roped off with yellow crime tape. It is not, the public has not used it. There was a question, I believe, where my client parked, his wife parked her car under the pavilion. The chief called me, I called Mr. Blass, it was moved. Since that time, he understands nothing goes under there. He doesn't use it as storage, and certainly there's no customers who are sitting there. Okay. And it's roped off now, taped off.
So that answer, the chief basic concern that it's not public use in no way, form, or fashion. Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pilkins, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got to pursue something here. Also, in the write-up that I studied today at length, I see that there was a problem with a food truck that's been semi-permanized there, and that maybe the pavilion was for an eat-in spot off of that. I'd like to know a little something about the whether that's been corrected yet.
Commissioner, most respectfully, I can't address that because it wasn't part of the allegations. I'm not prepared to address it at this time. I'd be happy to investigate it. I believe the food truck is there and is operating as a food truck. but I'll be happy to look into that and answer your question promptly.
Thank you, Mr. Bittner.
Any other questions from Mr. Chairman or any other commissioners? All right, Bittner, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. I'd ask, given the totality of these circumstances, what type of violation this is. It's essentially, most respectfully, it's serious in that it can affect health, safety, and welfare. It hasn't. It's not going to. And I'd ask the board to impose a reprimand and costs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bittner. With that, I'll turn it over to the board for discussion, decision.
I'm just going to reiterate what I mentioned before, basically from last month's testimony, what we found as far as the inspection, that there were no permits, and that what that did was prompt the licensee to go forward and get those permits. Apparently some of them were tied up, I understand that, but the bottom line is most people will wait till they get the permit before they build on, etc. So I'm going to throw it out to the other commissioners for their comments, and then we'll deal with it.
Well, Commissioner Pilkins, there's a lot of things that I'm worried about with the handling of food and beverage. Everything's a moving part. However, I really, at this point in juncture, the licensee has worked so hard to get it this far. And yes, there's obviously mistakes along the way. I think I would like to, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this or not, but I would recommend that that we have a series of inspections at the first part of May and see if everything's complied with at that point. And if they're willing to, well, we can do it if we want. I just think it's a good idea. There were a lot of food handling issues, bad, dirty uniforms, wiping cloths in the wrong place. Many things that I saw that bothered me with a place that's using, is a food place. Anyway, that are just, there's some comments that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that part of the documentation you received today? John?
It was indeed.
I didn't get a chance to review that, unfortunately.
Yeah, the permits were very telling, very telling. I've spent years in the food business, and running a food, much like Mr. Sanchez runs, is a big job. It really is. So I would, anyhow, those are my comments on the thing. I made a lot of mistakes going along too. So let's, I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
I did have the opportunity to review the drawing and everything this afternoon as well. And it's very complicated, in reference to looking at those and trying to make a decision here tonight. And I recognize the fact that it has been a lengthy discussion, as well as a carryover February. And it's not a very easy decision to make, in particular concerning the wealth and health and safety of not just the clientele, but even the individuals that's there. So I have to acknowledge Mr. Bittner for his presentation. It was a very good presentation. And I'm ready to go along with any motion that I feel is reasonable by you, the chairman, or by my fellow commissioner.
I would be open to a recommendation on a motion.
Well, before I make a motion, which I'm happy to do, I would like to make a recommendation that we fine them $500, which is a very low sum considering all the things that I saw and was briefed on. Just give you a minute or two, and then someone else can maybe make a motion. They don't have to agree with me.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilkins, I'm sorry, gentlemen, if I could just respond to that. The paperwork from the health department were items to correct. And so they cited Mr. Bass. They did not close his restaurant down. They did not give him a violation notice. They gave him quite a long list of things that he needed to correct. And that's why they're coming back on April the 26th. But most respectfully, the health department, it didn't rise in their mind, the primary agency chargeable with the health, safety, welfare of the citizens, to close them down or to cite him. And I'd ask the board, because they are corrective actions, not violations, not to be punitive because of the things he's correcting.
Mr. Bittner, your position is not well taken. The things that were wrong in the food handling portion is a management problem. And I'm not satisfied that fixing it one time is going to take care of things. That's, health and welfare of the public is the primary thing for what I look at anyway. And these are troubling things, but at the same time, I'm trying to find a solution here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we can get involved specifically with certain food, sanitary issues at this point. I think the record is that, again, there were no permits. We discovered that. After discovering that, notifying the licensee, things started to happen. Took a long time to get things going, but it looks like they're on the same track. So $500 was thrown out. I would welcome any motion at this point to close the chapter. You're muted.
You're muted, Mr. Pilkins.
I have it. Yeah, my motion would be to fine them $500 plus cost.
Is there a second to that?
Is that for clarification, is that $500 total?
It's 500 total, yes, plus cost.
Thank you.
Is there a second to that? Okay, no second. So is there another motion? I think, are we looking for additional or less, more?
Just Commissioner Duffy, I feel based upon the fact that the licensee has, contributed a lot in reference to trying to rectify the situation and addressing the issues, even the citation that was given, and he has responded, properly to all of the permits and versus $500. I would, love, to entertain a motion of saying $400, as long as the permits are approved and given back. And again, going back to the comment that was made that we'll be able to see all the permits when they are presented and given to us, and the cooperation of the licensee. I just like to consider the motion of $400.
Is there a second for that? I'll go ahead and second that and ask for those in favor. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those
Commissioner
opposed?
Wilkins is aye.
Aye, 3. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Hagner, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is Chief Wayne Harris calling the next case. This is the grill at Quarterfield Station, known as Gary's at Quarterfield Station LLC. Gwen G. Chalmers, member. Sarah N. McCready, a member. Caitlin A. Chalmers, member. Inspector Earl W. Barnes. This is a non-restricted license. This is for a change of officer. Currently, Gwen Chalmers, a member. William Odie, member, and Robert Shrewbridge, member on behalf of Gary's Grill, Quarterfield Station LLC, 7704 Quarterfield Road, Suite D, Glen Burnie, Maryland, 21061. This is a Class H license for beer and wine on sale only and Sunday license. Anyone wishing to testify for or against, please raise your right hand. If you have video, please turn your video on. Ms. Chalmers and Gwen,
Yes.
will you turn your video on so we can see you, please?
Okay, all right, hold on, we're looking. All right, here it goes.
Okay, might need a little one. There you go.
Okay.
Ms. Chalmers, Caitlin Chalmers, do you have video, please?
Is that a right or left hand?
It's been a long night.
Yeah, Robert K. You're at the end of it. Robert, Mr. Robert Fuco, sir, you're on the telephone. Are you there?
Sarah's calling.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, he's the attorney.
Great.
I'm sorry, Eddie.
I said, yeah, Mr. Fuco is the attorney representing the.
Okay, fine. Caitlin Chalmers, Ms. Chalmers, are you here?
We're trying to, she's there, but don't ask me. Hold on.
I'm working on her.
Ms. Chalmers, I see you're not muted anymore. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, this Chalmers can. We're waiting for the other.
Oh, Caitlin.
Yes.
Well, she just went muted again. Now she's unmuted.
I can't.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Can't see it, Kate.
I can't, it will not let me access my camera.
Mr. Praley, are we okay to go audio?
Yes, sir. We can proceed forward.
Okay. Ms. Caitlin Chalmers, we're going to proceed. Leave your audio on and we'll proceed. Please raise your right hand. Okay. And do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay, very good. Please state your name and address for the record.
Gwen Chalmers, 356 Sheffield Road, Severna Park, Maryland, 21146.
Thank you. Caitlin Chalmers, please.
My name is Caitlin Chalmers. I think you said date of birth is 10/20/1983. My address, I'm sorry, it's hard to hear. My address is 467 Severnside Drive, Severna Park, Maryland, 21146.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Creedy.
Sarah McCready, 1219 Meadowview Road, and that's in Pasadena, Maryland, 21122.
Thank you all very much, Mr. Fraley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Fuoco, if you don't mind putting your name and address on the record.
Absolutely. For the record, Robert Fuoco, spelled F-U-O-C-O. Address is 2661 Reaver Road,
Suite 300, Annapolis, 21401.
Thank you, Mr. Fuoco. At this point, you can present your case by way of proffer or testimony or a combination of both.
I'll just proffer. I've already submitted the full application and the supporting documents. So what we're doing is Mr. Adi and Mr. Shoebridge have resigned their positions. We are asking to substitute Ms. McCready and Caitlin Chalmers as their replacements. Their minority interest holders and officers. The resident agent, Wayne Chalmers, has not changed. So we've submitted the application. We've submitted financial information for Ms. McCready and Ms. Chalmers, the letters of resignation by Mr. Adi and Mr. Shoebridge, the membership interest held by Ms. McCready and Ms. Chalmers has also been submitted as evidence, along with minutes of the meeting approving the transaction and an affidavit of no debts signed by the managing member. So I believe the documentation is in place, and I also believe that Ms. McCready and Ms. Chalmers have also submitted their fingerprints. So unless I'm missing something, I think you have a complete application, and we're asking for your approval of this.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions of Mr. Fuoco or his clients?
I was wondering where Gary is these days.
Bill, you can answer that.
He's in Florida.
Oh.
So Gary,
He's in Florida.
So Gary, so I'm Bill Chalmers, and thank you very much. So Gary, that's a funny question. He lives in Naples, Florida. He opened a restaurant and it had to close down. That was pre-COVID, and he's in real estate now, and he's doing quite well. And Chrissy, his daughter, and Robin, their children and Gary's grandchildren are all living in Naples as well.
Oh, wonderful. That's a great story. Other than that, I have no questions.
Commissioners, any additional questions?
Commissioner Duffy, I have no questions.
Hello, Mr. Fuoco. It's John Pilkins. I have no questions.
Mr. Pilkins, it's good to hear your voice, and I've been watching most of the hearing until my device shut down.
Yeah, too much of my face on something will generally shut it down.
So I do want to say something.
It's great.
So Bob, when you went mute and you couldn't talk, does that mean that the meter went off on my charges?
No, not at all.
Ka-ching.
All right, well, if there are no additional questions, Mr. Fuoco, do you have anything else to add?
No, I do not. Thank you for the opportunity to join by phone instead of by Zoom. I apologize for that.
Sure. All right, well, with that, we will turn it over to the board for decision.
I will make a motion that we move to change or approve the change of officer in this case, and looking for a second.
Second.
Any discussion beyond that? See none? I'll call the roll. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion is carried. Good luck.
Thank you.
And good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Inspector Harris, before we do this last case, can I take a 2-minute recess?
Please do.
All right.
Are you asking me here or you asking? 2
I have
minutes.
further,
Let's
I
take a
have
2 minute
further to go. 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
2 minute break.
All right. Thanks.
Kids.
recorded that part of it. I missed the beginning of it, but I recorded it. I'm recording a sparkling beverage.
I'll go get one for you.
He's in Naples selling real estate. Gary Anderson. No.
I have a little dog that starts barking if I don't keep feeding her. So I had a pocket full of little dog bones the whole evening. So I tell you that so you feel sorry for me.
Right.
Okay. We're waiting for Ms. Carter.
This is Steve Preller. I'll be handling the hearing on behalf of the applicant, not Linda Carter. And Michael Blonder would be joining us.
I have Mr. Blonder. It looks like he's muted. Mr. Michael Blonder.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to start off by reading the case, Mr. Presley, if you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready if commissioners and the chairman are ready.
Yep, I'm ready.
Yeah,
Okay.
We're ready.
Next case is the Crab Shack, known as the Caribbean Grill LLC. Michael Blonder, authorized member. The inspector is James McCarthy. This is a new license for 1260 Crane Highway, Crofton, Maryland, 21114. This is a Class B license for beer, wine, and liquor, entertainment and Sunday license with outdoor dining. Anyone wishing to testify for or against, please raise your right hand. Mr. Blonder, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you solemnly, hold your hand up, sir. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
It's Michael Blonder. Address is 703 Hartford Road, Davidsonville, Maryland, 21035.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Preller, you want to identify yourself as for the record?
Yes, Steve Preller, attorney on behalf of the applicant, the Caribbean Grill LLC.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Preller?
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you.
Hold on one second. Mr. Harris, I appreciate it. But just for the record, Mr. Preller, now will be your opportunity to present your case. You can present your case by way of testimony from Mr. Blonder or by way of proffer. It's your choice.
Thank you. I believe we'll do a combination of two to try to expedite matters tonight.
Thank you.
The first matter is the Chapter 2, the Rules of Procedure with respect to COVID Zoom hearings provides that all exhibits shall be filed electronically. We have filed all of our exhibits electronically. There are 11 exhibits, and I would move those into the record at this time in the absence of any objection.
Okay, those will be accepted, Mr. Preller.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Blonder, I'm going to start by asking you a series of questions with regard to your qualification as a licensee. You had filled out and submitted an application pursuant to which you made certain representations. Are all those representations in your application true and accurate as of tonight?
They are.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Are you registered to vote?
Yes.
What is your educational background?
I have some college.
And where did you go to college?
I went to college at Boca Raton, which is now Lynn University.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been involved in the hospitality industry?
Since about 1989.
And how long has the Blonder family held interest in various restaurants and other businesses in the hospitality industry?
I believe we started off in 1986 with Buddy's Crab. Well, I think we started off with Harvey's Smorgasbord and then Buddy's Crabs and Ribs.
Okay. And generally, what's your personal experience in the hospitality industry?
Well, in Buddy's, I hold the license there, but I've also done every job that's ever been in the restaurant. So I've washed dishes, I've cooked, I've cleaned, I go through their books.
Right. Okay. And so that would be over 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry?
Correct.
All right. And what is your current occupation?
I am the manager of AL Goodies, which is a family-run business.
And how long have you been doing that?
Since 1984.
Okay. And as part of that management role, do you manage employees?
I do.
Okay. Have you ever previously held a liquor license? You had mentioned Buddy's.
I do. I'm on Buddy's Crabs and Ribs. So I also was on the liquor license for Fat Boys Crab Shack.
Okay. And Fat Boys Crab Shack being the entity that filed a protest tonight.
Is that
Yeah, it's Fat Boys Crab Shack in Arundel County, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And when did you first serve as licensee for Buddy's? For Buddy's?
I believe it was 1989.
Okay, so that's according to my math, about 33 years. Have you ever had any violations over that 33-year period?
Yeah, we have had a couple violations. I believe it's 3 or 4 over that period.
Okay, so maybe one a decade.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever been convicted of violating any liquor laws?
Me, no.
Have you ever been convicted of a felony?
No.
Have you ever been charged with violating any gambling laws?
No, sir.
Are you familiar with the laws and rules and regulations of the Board of License Commissioners of Anne Arundel County concerning the sale of alcoholic beverages?
I am.
Do you understand that these laws, rules, and regulations, do you agree to abide by all of them?
I do.
Okay. Do you have a financial interest, either directly or indirectly, in any other establishment in Arundel County or in the state of Maryland that has an alcoholic beverage license other than already disclosed with respect to Buddy's?
Just Buddy's.
Okay. And where's Buddy's located?
It's in the city of Annapolis.
Okay.